Enter the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience.
Experience Thursday chat. We'll get all of your questions into the YouTube chat right now, so get them in there. And if you're talking about season long, if you're talking about DraftKings pricing, mention that in the question right off the hop, only because it makes it a lot easier to answer that way, so I'm not answering a question that no one really asked. So I do want to let everyone know, please give the episode a like. That goes a long way to help us continuing to do these chats, and thank you all for tuning in. You can always catch up on demand, whether it's this video or on the podcast version after the fact. I'll be live again 10 a.m. Sunday morning, same spot, DraftKings YouTube channel. It's me, Garion, and everyone's favorite, Tim Undercust, breaking down all the latest news, the headlines, the inactives, and taking your start-sit questions when it matters the most, because some of the stuff we don't even know right now. Apologies again for the pick show with myself, Feinberg, and Tim. There's just been a video problem with it. We're still trying to get it resolved. Probably won't be out today. Maybe we can get it out for Friday or for the weekend. It's a great show. And you can check out the cheat sheet from the picks that we actually made. That's up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme right now. I suggest you go check that out just to see who Cust is picking, so you can just pick against whoever Tim picks, and boom, you're in the money when it comes to that. But let's get right into this. In the description, you can find my DraftKings cheat sheet, my updated rankings. I'll be updating them again around 7 p.m. tonight before the Thursday game. If you got questions about that, and after the injury reports file in, I'll be doing the same thing almost every day. Probably not a big update on Friday because we're going to wait until everything happens. I will be doing a show with Jeff Ulrich Friday afternoon, probably around 4:30 for release Friday night, Saturday morning, once we have a more concrete idea of who's playing and who's sitting after the injuries happen. Plus, we're going to project out some DraftKings ownership. Question, the first, give a like, don't forget, is from, let's see here, Smoking Guns 40. Pat, what's up? What's up, Smoking Guns 40? Whose defense do you prefer this week? The Ravens, the Jags, or the Saints? Now, I'm guessing this is why this is a DraftKings question, because obviously you wouldn't have those three defenses. I like the Ravens the best. I think that they're in the best spot. Unfortunately, everyone kind of agrees with that the Ravens are in a primo spot at home, now up to 8-point favorites against an offense which looks pretty brutal. They're starting Nate Peterman. Maybe Nate Peterman is not at San Diego bad like he was last year, but just in general, I mean, just to go down $100 against the Jags could be the move. It all depends. I'm playing the Ravens regardless of ownership, and I think they're the cash game do you want to play. However, if we start looking at ownership, and what everyone is up to in this sense, the Ravens are going to be like 35-40% owned. So if you just wanted to fade the public as a game theory move, I understand that. I would probably prefer the Jags over the Saints in the spot. It's very, very close. I actually like the Titans and the Panthers a little bit down the list. I think that's the contrarian move you want to do, because if you're going to pay up, I'm very firmly in the camp that the Ravens are the best DST play of week one. Now, defenses, a lot like tight ends in general, highly variant when it comes to their performance. So a really highly ranked good defense might not have a big fantasy day. They just might have a good defensive day in general. That doesn't always lead to a lot of fantasy points. That's why the Jags kind of worry me a little bit, because if that is just Leonard Fournette and Saquon Barkley running back and forth at each other, I mean, the opportunity to get points off fumbles is not quite the same as sacks, turnovers, and touchdowns like it is if teams are down a lot in games. So if you expect the Bills to be down by a lot or the Bucks to be down by a lot, the Ravens and Saints make more sense in that spot. So, next question from Nick. Who do I start in a standard league, Derrick Henry or Latavius Murray? There's been more buzz recently about Dalvin Cook. They're non-committal on his role. At least that was the report that I saw earlier today at a Vikings camp. I'm worried about Dalvin Cook in terms of, is he going to be a bell cow back week one? I still think at worst he gets 65% of the run, so that would make Derrick Henry in this spot a little bit better, actually a lot better than Latavius Murray. You're playing them both sort of for the same thing, but we don't know what the role that Derrick Henry is going to have in the Titans offense. Is he going to be a 65% guy playing first and second down and getting all the goal line work for the Titans, or is Dion Lewis going to be the one who is primarily on the field because they want to go to a more spread, faster-paced attack? So I think that the floor for both of them is actually incredibly low. They're probably going to need to score a touchdown. However, in this matchup, I really do prefer Derrick Henry over someone like Latavius Murray, because at least I can pencil in Henry for at least 12 touches, and that's on the bottom end. With Murray, we just have no idea. So Henry over Murray in that spot. Smoking Guns, again, 40, got to the chat early, getting them questions in. Would a Brady, Hogan, Gronk, and Burkhead stack be too much on a lineup in a GPP tournament? I don't think so. We've seen stacks before like that when complete team stacks. I would say that if you're playing that many Patriots and you think that the passing game is going to be involved that much, you might want to bring it back the other way. It's going to be tough to afford Hopkins and something like that, but even if you wanted to play a sleeper like Ryan Griffin, who's a cheap tight end to save salary, or just play Lamar Miller on the way back as well, that's something that can be quite effective. I don't have a problem with it. I probably won't do as deep of a Patriot stack as that, and especially if you're only playing one lineup, that's committing a lot to one offense, especially since like James White could have 9 catches, and then you're like, man, James White, he's the only guy that I don't have. So if you're playing multiple iterations of that lineup, I don't mind it at all. Just objectively, I don't mind it, but it's a lot of eggs to place in one basket, especially because this Texans-Patriots game is probably going to be one of the more popular stacks of the entire week, especially that Patriot side of the ball, because of Burkhead, because of White, that you can squeeze these guys in. And even when you're looking at receiver 1, I guess you could theoretically go with like Hopkins, Watson, Fuller, and Griffin as a stack if you wanted to do the 4 receivers, and that might turn out to be cheaper. But just having Burkhead as the cheapo in there really does save a lot of cap, and Hogan's only $6,100 in that sense. So I don't hate it. When obvious cheap chalk opens up, James Conner, for example, how do you approach your DK exposure when playing 20 lineups? I feel like it's an almost impossible fade this week. The one good thing about James Conner in this slot, when you look at his DraftKings pricing and he comes in, there's actually a slew of other running backs that are highly capable in this sense too. Like Royce Freeman is right there. Chris Carson is right there. Rex Burkhead is there. James White is there. Peyton Barber is there. So there's a lot of cheap options in that sense. So one, if James Conner really does stick out to you as the guy to play, then maybe you don't pair him up with Elvin Kamara, who's going to be super chalky at the top, because a lot of people will have that combination. Maybe you double pay down at running back, and you say, yeah, I'm going to take James Conner, but then I'm going to mix in Rex Burkhead, or I'm going to mix in Peyton Barber, or Chris Carson, or Royce Freeman, or James White, whoever it may be, whoever you prefer the most. I just think that sometimes value is too much to pass up, especially in football, as opposed to a lot of the other sports. I like the condensed one, something like golf, that just because you have a chalky guy in your lineup doesn't mean anything. Like, if that guy is going to be good and he's a value, play him. Don't talk yourself out of any good play just because you think that other people are on it. Never do that. Just don't take the 5 most obvious plays of the week that everyone is on and jam them all into one single lineup. Have different iterations. Make variance lineups. That I think it's still going to be okay. I like James Conner. I don't love him. I don't love him substantially more than any of the other guys that I just mentioned, so maybe I'll have less exposure to him, but I'm still going to play James Conner if Le'Veon Bell sits, don't get me wrong. But I might not be all in, and that's usually the stance you want to take. Be underweight to the field. Let's say we project James Conner. I don't have a good grasp of this. I'll have a better sense tomorrow when we do the DK ownership show. But let's say he comes at 20%. Does that mean Rex Burkhead is now second, potentially Royce Freeman? Yeah. So maybe someone like Peyton Barber you can sneak by at like 4% ownership, and that's the pivot that you want to go to. So if you played, let's say, theoretically 10 lineups, you have let's say 20 lineups. You play 2 James Conner lineups, play 4 Peyton Barber lineups. You're overweight to one, you're underweight on the other, or even just match the field and play 4 James Conner lineups. And then if he does go off, you're not at a huge disadvantage. That's the way that I would look into that scenario. But especially at running back, if you can guarantee volume is what you're after, especially at these cheap prices. Because when we start talking about guys like Keelan Cole or John Ross or the receivers that are below $4,000, yeah, they're good plays, but they could also put up giant zeros. We don't know what their volume is going to be like. At least with a running back, that's easier to project. You can project how often they're going to be on the field, how involved they're going to be in the passing game, how many carries they're going to get. Will that running back specifically get the goal line work? And that stuff is just more set in stone. So I would have an easier time fading a chalky, cheap wide receiver than I would a running back. Start Ingram or Reed. That would be Evan Ingram. I prefer Jordan Reed in this spot. To be perfectly honest with you, they say he's healthy. The toes are all in one place. And listen, Jordan Reed could just go down after 3 snaps because he's Jordan Reed. But if we're talking about upside, just the matchup alone is way better. Plus, a lot of what we saw from Ingram last year was very low efficiency, very high volume. I mean, when you look at the number of targets, 115 last season, I don't think that he's going to get back to that number now that Barkley's there, now that Shepard's healthy, now that Beckham has returned. So you have to understand what is the pecking order in the offense. At least with Washington, we don't really know yet because we haven't seen what Alex Smith is going to do. It's probably going to be Crowder number 1, or it could be Reed number 1. They could be 1A, 1B, 1-2, whatever it is. At least Jordan Reed is going to be higher on that spectrum than Evan Ingram is going to be in their own offense. Plus the matchup, well, I doubt that Patrick Peterson locks down, let's say, Jordan Reed. It's a possibility, I suppose. Probably unlikely to happen that the matchup itself is just better. So Jordan Reed over Evan Ingram for me. Besides Gronk, which tight end has the most upside this week? When we talk about this, and if we're talking main slate only, I suppose it's Zach Ertz in the Thursday night game, but it's Travis Kelce. The matchup sucks, but if we're talking about upside purposes, it's always Travis Kelce. He's potentially the wide receiver 1 on his team despite being a tight end, and that's always what you look for. There's a lot of inherent risk that comes. He's very pricey on DraftKings. The matchup isn't great, and we don't know what's going to happen with Patrick Mahomes yet in terms of do they have a connection that they can go through. But when we're talking about touchdown upside, reception upside, and yardage upside, and big play upside, and especially for on DraftKings getting that 100-yard bonus, then it would have to be Travis Kelce in this spot, and you pay the premium for that. So that's the way that I would go if you're not going to play Gronk. Tyrod Taylor or Ryan Tannehill for the value. I sneaky kind of like Ryan Tannehill this week. I like Stills. There's probably going to be no Parker. I kind of like Amendola a little bit as well. And if the Titans can get up in this game and play at a quicker pace, the Dolphins defense reeks. So the Titans should be able to put up points. And if that puts the Dolphins into catch-up mode early, you're looking at a situation where Tannehill might have to drop back anywhere between like 35 and 45 times. That's going to be a lot of volume and a lot of concentrated volume. I prefer the receiving core in general, the 2 guys that I mentioned, Kenny Stills and Danny Amendola, more than I would just prefer like a naked Ryan Tannehill. But if that's a stack that you want to do, those 3 guys, it's one that no one's going to be on and does have some sneaky potential. They're playing at home. They're used to the heat. So I don't hate it. It's not something I'd say, you know what, you need to play Ryan Tannehill here. But I just prefer them going up against the Titans defense in potential game flow situations than this Cleveland game with Pittsburgh on the road. You never know what their offense is going to do. It just could be a very mucky game. So I would play Tannehill over I'd play Tyrod in that spot. And I got jumped on the questions in the chat, so let's see what else we're doing here. Game stack of Cincinnati and Indy, a good choice this week, and who would you use? I don't hate it. Especially with Burfict out, people are going to overrate how good the Bengals defense is. And I think a lot of people right now are leaning more towards Andy Dalton than Andrew Luck. I mean, whatever side you want to play of that, but I would bring it back on both sides. I think that AJ Green is a stone cold lock this week for your cash game lineups. He's a good price. He inherits a tremendous matchup, and you know that the offense is going to be concentrated around him. So if you go all receiving game with the Bengals, you can bring it back with Jordan Wilkins, who is a pretty good price on the other side, or just bring it back with T.Y. Hilton or Jack Doyle from that side. But I wouldn't start getting into the craziness of just playing like 8 guys from this game or 6 guys from this game. The more logical stack, I think that if you're going to play Dalton, you play Green, and either Ross or Eifert in that spot, and then bring it back with one of like, I guess if you play Eifert, you probably don't want to do the double tight end set, or maybe that's something you can do. You play Ross, you play Green, you play Dalton, and then bring it back with Jack Doyle, and you get good exposure to that game, or even with T.Y. Hilton if you can afford that. But I don't hate that stack. It's one of my sneaky stacks of the week. I haven't quite decided. I'm only going to play 20 lineups this week, so I don't know if that's going to end up cracking it, if I might go with that Dolphins stack instead, because I know that's going to be even lower owned. Although I must admit the shootout potential for that Titans-Dolphins game is much lower than I think it will be for the Colts and Bengals game. How many should be in your pool for a 20 max lineup? That, for me, honestly, is a very unknowable question, especially when we break down by position, by position, by position. Less is always more when it comes to concentrating your lineup. So if you play, I'm just trying to work this out because I'm still in golf mode a lot at this point, and I've tried to been playing around with it, but some people like to take a scattershot approach. Some people like to really condense a core where you know what, I'm playing 3 quarterbacks and I'm just going to build around there. I think you want to narrow down your position at quarterback just to start with. Narrow down your quarterbacks, narrow down your defenses, narrow down your tight ends. And that might adjust if you want to stack certain tight ends with certain quarterbacks or certain defenses with certain running backs, which is a move that I highly recommend. However, once you start playing 8 quarterbacks in 20 lineups, you've basically raked yourself. So you need to commit to something. These are tough choices. And you're going to be wrong. No one wins, especially, and we're talking about GPPs here. No one's going to win playing GPPs every single week. And if people are trying to sell you on that fact, they're lying and they're fake news. You're going to have to take some lumps along the way. But the whole point of these giant mass multi-entry DraftKings tournaments, you're just looking to hit big in one. And when you concentrate a core, if you give yourself, let's say you play this Andy Dalton stack, but you just play it once or you play it twice in 20 lineups, well, maybe you were right on that, but all the other periphery pieces don't hit. So you want to have that like 5 times through your lineups to give yourself more opportunities. That if you're convinced these are the 3 best stacks that I like this week or the 4 best stacks, I'm going all in on those, and I want to have at least 4 or 5 lineups at least with these guys in them. That's the way you want to play it. So if it does hit, you give yourself the most opportunity to maximize you being right that week, and boom, if it leads to a big win, it leads to a big win. That's what you're playing for. If not, play your cash games. That's really the way that you have to understand it. Like if you're looking to play, it's almost like in the betting world when people, they don't want to bet one game because you're only getting double you're only winning your money back. If that happens, if you put down $10, you win $10, so you end up with 20. I don't want to play that game. I want to play an 8-team parlay. Well, how often is that really going to come through? You have to think about GPPs versus cash games very much the same way. So I have no real true answer for how often you should be or how many players you should play in a 20 max pool. I think that's up to you, and every single person you ask will probably have a different answer. I would suggest trying different things out. Find out what is successful for you, how you like to build. But again, I'm always under the idea that concentrating your core is always better than taking a scattershot approach. It might lead to bigger swings, but you're going to hit big when you hit big, and you're going to lose big when you lose. So you need to be prepared for that. Calling for rain tonight. Would playing both Philadelphia and Atlanta defense along with each other kickers be an option? That just feels like such big downside to me, to be perfectly honest with you, especially in these showdown contests where you want to get as many points as possible. Yeah, I can see playing the defenses. I mean, even playing, let's say you played Matt Ryan and Phillies D. I don't think that's really the end of the world because you have them both going. Just because Matt Ryan throws, let's say, 3 picks and potentially the Eagles return them for touchdowns, that doesn't mean that Matt Ryan will actually stop throwing. He'll just throw even more. 3 touchdowns and 3 picks is a pretty good fantasy day, especially when you can pile up points along the way. But I still think I would take the higher end options in each offense before playing defense and kickers in the situation. Although with this captain's mode in defense and kickers, I don't really know. Maybe I'll have someone on who can really break down this captain's pick showdown slate for a more in-depth look at the strategy. I'm only playing 3 teams in it, and I can tell you I did not roster or construct any of my teams in this method. But hey, maybe you're onto something, so play it. Maybe you're the only one who does it. It's a giant tournament, especially that $10 showdown contest tonight, that it could be something. David Russell says, don't forget to give those likes, guys. David Russell is 100% right. You smash that like button. That would be greatly appreciated. Paul, it says something wrong with the sound. I don't know if we've just been going dead air the entire time, but maybe there's something wrong. You're listening to the live feed, then we're good to go. Sorry about that. Jep? Oh, Jep, long-time listener. Thoughts on Dallas Goedert for tonight as well as season-long? Season-long is a bit tougher because if you're in a pinch, you really should have a better option than the second-string tight end on the Philadelphia Eagles. However, in Showdown, super cheap. He's in all 3 of my Showdown contests tonight because I'm playing touchdown or bust and getting those salary savings when it comes down to it that I can really load in. You can play Foles and Ryan in a single lineup too if you play someone like Dallas Goedert here. And without Alshon Jeffrey around, you might see a lot more 2 tight end sets, a lot more than you would see at least than when Alshon Jeffrey is back. And if the maximum coverage, the identifiable coverage really goes towards Zach Ertz, especially in the red zone, then Dallas Goedert is an able body, a giant body, and someone who could be the apple of Nick Foles' eye in this situation. So for his price point in the showdown contest, I like Dallas Goedert a lot. The next comment I should have read down, Paul. It's a fadeaway shot. Says his sound is all good. So hopefully the sound is all good for everyone out there. John asks, Pat, how safe is Doug Baldwin? I think he's pretty safe. I'm more concerned about the matchup against Denver than I am about his knee. Hopefully that he was sandbagging us this entire time, and that his 85% at best is just fake news, and that he's 100% ready to go. For my season-long teams, I am just hoping it's Doug Baldwin. I think he's on every single one of them. If you drafted Doug Baldwin, you're playing him this week. Now in DraftKings, he's going to come in at like sub 5% ownership because Chris Hogan's right there, and everyone will play Chris Hogan. So even in order to play a contrarian Doug Baldwin, I don't hate that. I still think that he's a candidate to lead the league in targets if he remains healthy for all 16 games. I am not convinced that the Seattle defense is going to be any good whatsoever, which means Russell Wilson will be passing more often than he did even last season. So that's completely bonkers when it comes down to it. So just volume-wise, the matchup's not great. I don't trust Doug Baldwin to be like a top 5 guy this week, but he might get the volume or at least the opportunity to potentially challenge this. Top 20 for sure. I believe I can go actually check my rankings and tell you where I have him at. I have Doug Baldwin coming at number 12, so the lowest end of wide receiver ones possible. I like him more than I like Beckham this week. So that's something to go with, especially if you think that Seattle might be playing from behind in this game, then that's an opportunity where you could see double-digit targets. And any receiver that's going to garner double-digit targets has the opportunity to be a wide receiver 1 for the week, regardless of how bad a matchup could be. So I'm rolling with my main man, Doug Baldwin. Should I play Nelson Aguilar or Jay Ajayi for the Thursday slate? I'm completely fading the Eagles' backfield in this situation. I like to find something that's more concentrated, and just because Ajayi is off of the injury report for the week, he was still banged up. He's still working his way back into game shape, and I don't know what the split is going to be between Ajayi, Clement, or Darren Sproles. Let's say Philly falls behind in this game, which is not out of the realm of possibility. Do we just see Darren Sproles on the field the entire time? I don't know, but that could happen. He is their best receiving back, so I would much prefer Nelson Aguilar. I used him on one of my 3. On my Eagles offense stack team, I used Nelson Aguilar. Another one, I used Mike Wallace in that spot. I think he's a decent play. I prefer Zach Ertz the most of all the pass catchers, but obviously he's the most expensive. So if you're looking for someone a bit cheaper or someone to bring back the other way if you're playing a Falcons stack, then Nelson Aguilar is certainly on the table. I'm not really touching Jay Ajayi in this spot. Now, I know you love Dougie Baldwin, but Aguilar over Dougie with that hurt knee, I think you're going a bit too far with that one. He's still the number 1 guy in this offense. Yeah, Chris Harris could shut him down, and I could be completely wrong. I'm still going to take that volume, though, so I would most definitely play Baldwin over Aguilar. How many QB? I just answered the QB question. Saw you on local cable in New York City late last night. Love it. Thank you, Nathaniel. Yeah, also, The Sweat is going to be on SNY at noon. If you're in the New York region, I'm going to be on that show as well Sunday morning, right after I finish my show at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, live on here. Be jumping on there. You can check out all the hits. The Sweat is actually live every single night from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. too on the DraftKings both YouTube and Facebook pages if you want to go check that out. Give them a like too, right after you give this episode a like. Like all the shows. Goes a long way. Oh, I also have an Instagram giveaway going on. I announced it at the beginning of Monday's show with Jake Seeley that if you go to Instagram, or you have Instagram, and you go to my page at the PME, pretty consistent across the board with that one, give the account a follow, the one of the desk sitting here, give it the heart, and then in the handle, leave your DraftKings handle, and you're in the draw to win $20 DK dollars, and I'll announce the winners on Monday's show, which will be live at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, breaking down the waiver wire with Jake Seeley and talking about all the games and taking your questions. So remember, tune into that as well. Flex 1 in a PPR league. Funchess or Alex Collins? I'm going Alex Collins all the way on this one. I don't really know how the distribution is going to break down. In terms of the passing game with Carolina, this could be a situation where they potentially get up in this game and just run the entire time, plus a lot of mouths to feed. At least I know with an 8-point favorite in Baltimore that against a bad run defense in terms of the Bills, that Alex Collins should at least see 16 to 20 touches in this game, however many they come. Plus, he's their goal line back. Much prefer Alex Collins, even though it is PPR scoring. Don't project him for many catches, but he should do enough to outperform at least the safety. Maybe the ceiling for Alex Collins isn't as high as it is for Devin Funchess, but that floor is like 3 times as high. So much prefer Alex Collins there. Season long, 2 flex spots, PPR. 2 of James White, Jamal Williams, and Nelson Aguilar. I'll go White and Williams in the spot. I'll lean with the running backs. You could talk me into Aguilar over James White if you really wanted to, but I'll lean towards the 2 running backs. I like the Panthers. That's not a question. Stills or Josh Gordon in a PPR league is my wide receiver number 2. For this week and potentially this week only, Hugh keeps saying that Josh Gordon's on a pitch count, and that seems really stupid. So I feel like Hugh Jackson's going to do that because he's a bad coach. I'll take Kenny Stills because Devontae Parker is sitting, like the matchup against Tennessee. Big fan. I'm a big fan of you, Robert. Burkhead or Ty Montgomery in PPR? Burkhead for sure. Wilson or Stafford in a season long, fearing Denver. And Stafford against the Jets. Yeah, I would fear Denver's defense as well, and it is a softer matchup for Matt Stafford. I still like the upside of Russell Wilson in this spot. It's a situation where that defense is going to let him down. We know what he can do with his legs. That I just think that, listen, maybe you have a really, really good team, and if you drafted Stafford over Wilson, you spent your first, 12 picks building up the rest of your roster. So I think you really need to look at your matchup in this situation. Are you a big favorite? Then maybe you take the floor of Matt Stafford. And he still does have upside for sure, and his floor is probably higher than Russell Wilson. But Russell Wilson is the best fantasy quarterback there is. This is why you end up drafting. This is why I had him rated as my number 1 guy coming into the season. Don't love him in this Denver matchup, but if Denver can put up points, Russell Wilson is going to be involved in like 95% of the scoring that Seattle does, unless they just turn around and hand it to Chris Carson over and over and over. So between his rushing ability, potential to score on the ground, and the fact that he might throw 40-plus times, sounds like a good recipe for a fantasy day, even if he does fumble and get sacked and throw some picks. I always lean towards the upside in these situations because I like to roll the dice. I'm not a floor player. I'm an upside player. I'll take Russell Wilson. Todd, more questions about 20 DK lineups. Maybe we'll dedicate an entire show to that, but if you do have questions about the 20 max entry, I addressed that near the beginning of the show if people want to go back and check that out. Because we got questions to get to here, people. That's why you give the show a like. Vernon Davis, what do you guys think, especially behind Jordan Reed? Well, you can't play him if Jordan Reed is playing. Doesn't mean he can't have a good game, but it's also zero potential waiting to go. I wouldn't hold a handcuff tight end. It's a good spot. And maybe the rapport with Alex Smith comes back from the San Fran days, but it's not someone you can trust. Thoughts about adding Sheldon Gibson at $200 for Millie Maker? I don't even know what you're talking about. It feels like something is wrong in that situation. Let's see here. Let's go to all. I don't know who's $200 in the Millie Maker. No idea what you're talking about, pal. Get it together. What's that? Oh, tonight's showdown, so it's not the Millionaire Maker. Now you got me running all in circles. I thought, which showdown are we looking at? There's like the captain's pick showdown only has offensive players. I actually haven't looked at the IDP one, so listen, if you think he's going to be good, great savings. I only looked at the captain's pick offense only showdown. I didn't even look at the other one. There's so many different contests you really want to narrow in. If you think he's going to be good, go play him. I was thinking like Millionaire Maker slate. That sounds crazy. Half-point PPR. Barber, James White, Shepard, Keelan Cole. I like Peyton Barber here. I know game script works against him, but he might end up on the field as the pass-catching running back as well. He looks solidified as the goal line back in Tampa, at least to begin the season. Maybe they get down by so much they're like, hey, Ronald Jones, you're terrible, get in the game. But other than that, it looks like Peyton Barber could sneak away with 70% of the snap share in Tampa, especially if they're down in those games. Those become highly valuable. Some greasy end of the game, potential touchdown runs here for him. So I like Peyton Barber the best of that bunch. Jack Doyle in play for GPPs if he is a chalk tight end. I guess it depends on how chalky that you think he's going to get. If he gets like 30%, you might want to fade him. But anywhere between like 10 and 20, I think you're fine. I like Jack Doyle this week. I think it's a nice matchup. I'd play him. I am playing him. Who should I start in my flex PPR? Doug Baldwin, AP, or Corey Davis? I like Doug Baldwin, and then I like Corey Davis, then I like AP. I'm not buying the revenge game narrative, and I am buying that AP has the better chance to score touchdowns, but if Washington does fall behind in this game, you're going to see a lot of Chris Thompson on the field. Hey, Pat, Marvin Jones or Robbie Anderson? You know I got to go with my main man, Mav, on the Monday night head-to-head clash between these two. I'll just take the consistency that Marv provides. I think people are really underrating Marvin Jones and how good he was outside of like the first 2 weeks last year. 61 catches, over 1,100 yards, 9 touchdowns. Yeah, Kenny Golladay is going to be on the field, but Marvin Jones is still the class of this Lions receiving core. And Robbie Anderson's probably the number 1 wide receiver, although now it's looking like Jermaine Kearse might get his way back into the mix, but I don't even know what the rapport between Robbie Anderson Wilson and Sam Darnold is. Super Bowl Sam, as Tim Andercuss said on the podcast this week. And also, go subscribe to the podcast on the iTunes feed. You can listen to all the picks up there. But I'm just going to trust in Marvin Jones, the situation that I've seen. For all we know, Darnold loves little Quincy Enunwa and doesn't like Robbie Anderson. If it was Josh McCown starting at quarterback for the Jets, I think this would be more of a conversation. But I mean, Slade just might follow Robbie around the field, and that's bad news for him. So I'm going with Mav in that situation. PPR League flex spot, Duke Johnson, Jamison Crowder, or Adrian Peterson in his revenge game. I like Jamison Crowder in this spot in full point PPR. Like I mentioned before, it's him or Reed as the primary passing weapon, especially with the A-dot. And you see the depth of routes that Jamison Crowder does. It almost works in perfect symbiosis with how Alex Smith likes to throw his routes. So I project a nice year for Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder for me in this spot. I don't want to see him come down on AP. He's going to be the lead back, but it's just not a situation that I love for this week as a road dog. Who should I start? Mike Gillislee, Duke Johnson, or James Conner in your flex? If there's no Le'Veon Bell, you play James Conner. Easy as that. What are your thoughts on Jalen Samuels? Chance he could emerge as the number one for the Steelers. Yes, he could emerge. We're not going to know that. He has tight end eligibility on Yahoo, which is kind of crazy. So if you play on Yahoo, go pick him up just to see what happens. But going into this week, you have to expect that it is James Conner. You're just trying to overthink yourself in the spot or trying to be a hero by playing a guy who could have 0 points in your lineup. Don't do that. If you want to pick him up, like I said, and wait and see, there is the potential that he could take over, but I wouldn't definitely not bank on that for week one. This seems like it's going to be the James Conner show if Le'Veon Bell does not report. From Evan, in full point PPR, would you rather start James Conner, Doug Baldwin, or Kenyon Drake at flex? I would still roll the dice on Baldwin, but that's me. James Conner is probably your safest play in that situation. If it's me, I'm playing Baldwin. Objectively, from a floor standpoint, probably James Conner. Second part of that question, would you rather start Goodwin or Davis at flex, given Xavier Rhodes' hamstring injury? I think if you're shooting for the moon, Goodwin's the play. I prefer Corey Davis in the spot, though, whether Rhodes is 100% or not playing. I think that if you're playing giant upside or if you're an underdog, you take that big play potential. But I do think that Corey Davis is going to be someone that's more involved than people think here. So I have them both rated. I believe I have Corey Davis 21 in my wide receiver rankings, Goodwin 24. So it's a real coin flip. These ones are really tough situations. I'll lean Davis very slightly, but if you like Goodwin, play Goodwin. Pat, Marvin Jones or Robbie Anderson? Hey, it's the same question as before. Marv Jones. Peyton Barber or Hyde as a running back too? I prefer Peyton Barber in this spot. Aguilar or Demaryius Thomas? I'll go Demaryius Thomas here. Who do you like between, on DraftKings, Christian McCaffrey or Joe Mixon? I'll take Christian McCaffrey in this spot because of the PPR potential that he brings to the table. If you're shooting for the moon, though, we're still not sure that maybe Carolina duped us all in the preseason. And maybe they will start using C.J. Anderson more in a rushing capacity than they showed rather than Christian McCaffrey and the 30 touches a game he's going to get. So floor-wise, it's McCaffrey. With Mixon, though, we know that he's locked into those goal line touches. At least we think he is. And maybe he is a bell cow back. So he might end up with more touches in a better matchup against Indianapolis. Plus, he's cheaper. And I don't think a ton of people are on Joe Mixon. I always worry about Cam stealing touchdowns from Christian McCaffrey. So when we look at the very top here, 6,100 versus 6,400. If you're playing cash games, the move is probably Christian McCaffrey. For GPPs, though, Mixon, I think, is sneakier than people realize in a very solid matchup. And if you don't think the Colts are going to be any good, it's a spot where they might be running a ton here and getting all the goal line touches to him where McCaffrey may have to split them or may not even see them. So that's something to consider. I think they're both very close from an upside perspective, but if you just want to play ownership, take Joe Mixon. Why not? Aguilar or Goodwin week one? I'm going with Goodwin. Freeman or Lynch as a flex spot? I don't know what Freeman we're talking about here. You got to be careful with these Williams, with these Freemans. If it's Devontae Freeman, it's for sure. And I think I've even been talked into some. I really like Marshawn Lynch this year. This is a bad matchup. But yeah, Royce Freeman over Marshawn Lynch as well. DraftKings, what do you think about paying down for Flacco and stacking him with Crabtree? Well, you'd be one of the few to do that. Where there's such giant favorites in this game, the only Raven that I really want to touch, well, the two Ravens I want to touch, Collins and the Baltimore defense, I'm fading the rest. I prefer Crabtree over just playing Flacco. But there are plenty of spots where you can pay down. I prefer Ryan Fitzpatrick to pay down. I prefer Case Keenum to pay down. I prefer Ryan Tannehill to pay down all over Joe Flacco. I'm in wait-and-see mode as it pertains to Joe Flacco. But yeah, those are the three guys. Keenum, Fitzpatrick, in that spot, and even Tannehill slightly above. I believe he's $5,400. I like that a little bit better. Who to start for my wide receiver 3? Tyler Lockett or Corey Davis or Marquise Goodwin or Flash Gordon? Do you have the option between all of them, or are you picking between those two? I'd go Corey Davis over going Tyler Lockett, and I would go Marquise Goodwin over Flash Gordon, but I would go Davis above Goodwin, then Gordon, then Lockett. A lot of these answers can be found in the rankings, by the way, which are in the description of the show. Or if you follow me on Twitter at the PME, you're going to find these out pretty quickly. Who will be, this is from Evan again, who will be better on the season? Cole or Aguilar or Mike Williams? I can drop Nelson Aguilar for Cole or Williams. If you can drop Aguilar and he's not someone that you're playing and you just want to shoot for upside, I would just play Mike Williams because maybe he's a first-round talent. Maybe Tyrell's better than he is, but he had a pretty impressive preseason. It's in a good offense in a division where no one's really super terrified of many of the defense. Denver's defense, sure, but when they play Denver, Chris Harris is going to be locking down Keenan Allen, not Mike Williams. That actually might be a really good spot for him. So I would take Mike Williams because this is not a guy you're going to play every week. I think he's the least safe. He probably has the lowest floor, but if he's a bench player, Mike Williams. If I was just going to play one, it would be Nelson Aguilar. How popular do you think the David Johnson-Kamara duo will be on DraftKings this week? Kamara is going to be insanely popular, as he should be. I love Kamara. David Johnson, not so much. You can work lineups in playing both them, and I'm saying that you can do that, but I don't think it's going to be super popular. It's not potentially super smart because of what the rest of your roster might look up if you go pay up at running back, but there's enough cheap options at running back to fill that flex spot, or if you want to pay down for someone like Ryan Griffin in your tight end or potentially flex spot and go double cheap tight ends, and maybe that's how you make up salary. If you can make it work, I got no problem with it, and I don't think that it's going to be incredibly popular. What is the ceiling for Jamal Williams? He likes to come out strong if he can keep the job. It's just two really bad matchups out of the gate. Like, this Bears matchup is tough, but they are 7.5-point favorites. You would think if there's ever a game where the Packers are going to throw the ball, it is this one. So you're looking at potentially 20 touches for Jamal Williams, what he can do with those. He was very good last year. And he was not playing with Aaron Rodgers. He's playing with Brett Hundley. So the running lane should be a bit more open for him in this spot. Maybe he can test out Khalil Mack. If Khalil Mack is doing all the damage and making all the tackles on Jamal Williams, that means he's 3, 4, 5 yards downfield. So that's good news for Jamal Williams. So I think that he's fine. I have him as a top 20 play this week, more towards the 20 than the 10. He's right in that mix with all those guys, but I do like him here. I don't think that he's super safe, but if he can get himself involved in the receiving game and does look good the first 2 weeks, he can hold on to this job for the entire season, and that would be a very valuable running back too to have on your roster, or potentially flex, because that's where he was being drafted. With all the value at running back on DK, do you think a stack of 3 higher-priced running backs is a decent contrarian option in GPPs? Sure, why not? Robert Thomas, would you trade Adams, I'm guessing that's Devontae Adams, and Howard for Bell? Seems like a lot. Okay, the rest of his roster would be David Johnson, Bell, Collins, Henry, Ingram, Barber. Wide receivers would be Davis, Goodwin, Kupp, Cole, Goodwin. I'm not saying that you don't need Le'Veon Bell, but I like your running backs anyway, especially if you introduce Howard back into that mix. You might have some questions every week of whether you want to play Collins or Henry or Howard. You might make some bench mistakes that way. And, of course, having a team of Bell and David Johnson. But giving up Devontae Adams in that along with Howard, if it was just one of them, like if it was just Howard, it's the Adams part that scares me because you have Davis, Goodwin, Kupp, Cole, and Godwin as your receivers. Having a stud like Devontae Adams is going to be very valuable to your receiving core. That, yeah, of course, getting Le'Veon Bell is awesome. You want to go do that, but giving up a top 15 running back and a top 10 wide receiver to go get him, I'm not sure I love that so much with the way that your team is made up. So I would pass. Maybe if it was like Howard and Ingram, package those two together for Bell, now it's a different story. Or Barber, or Collins and Howard, and then you get Bell. Because we don't even know what's going to happen with Bell. He could sit the first 10 weeks for all we know. He could play Sunday for all we know. That by getting rid of Bell, if you're a Bell owner, you're giving up a lot of headache that comes along with it. The week-to-week, do I fill in? I didn't draft James Conner, now someone else has him. But if you do acquire him, you need to know the risk that you're taking on. I think that's just a lot to give up. Those are two really good players. So like if it was like just even straight up Devontae Adams for Le'Veon Bell, I don't know if I would do that with this team because you need a super strong receiver and you have a super stud running back to begin with. So roster construction, risk tolerance, all these things go into the Bell trade, but the more information we have, the more his market will be set. I would just go ask people, what do you want for Le'Veon Bell? If they say that, that's too much, and you can work them back from there. Hey, Pat, Jordan Howard or Derrick Henry for my number 2 running back spot? I'll go Jordan Howard for that one. Half-point PPR, Ajayi or the uncertainty of Connor in the Pittsburgh situation. I would just roll the dice on Connor and just go to whoever you have next. I mean, I am so confounded by this Ajayi situation, how the split's going to work out, whether he's truly healthy or not. I don't know. At least I know if Bell sits, Connor's probably seeing 70% of the work. That's a running back to lock and load, especially against Cleveland. Play Connor. Oh, no, everything just jumped on me. Got to go scroll back. A lot of questions in this chat. And if you see it on Twitter, go share it around too. Oh my God, there's a lot of questions. I'm going to have to start rapid firing as we're already 40 minutes into this. Where was I? Paul, do you remember where I was?
You were... There's a bunch of people talking about Jordan Howard.
Jordan Howard?
Is Adrian
Oh.
Peterson a good GPP play since he was named starter yesterday?
Oh no, let's see.
That'd be a decent place to start back.
Here we go. Oh, start Connor, Carson, or Freeman. This is a decision a lot of people have here. I'll start Connor if there is no Lev Bell. If not, then it would be Carson, then it'd be Freeman. Apparently, I'm like the lowest guy in the world on Freeman. I have him ranked as running back number 21. For context, if you look at the rankings, I believe they're 19, 20, and 21 in my rankings. Whoever you prefer, I prefer Connor if he is the one playing and Bell sits. I traded Derrick Henry for someone's 4th rounder next year. Yeah, that's a great fucking story, man. Thanks for bringing the heat to the chat. Jordan Howard or Derrick Henry? Jordan Howard. Adrian Peterson, a good GPP play since he was named the starter yesterday. I'm not playing him. I don't think that many are going to play him because I prefer the running backs that are below him, and I don't see him doing much in the receiving game. You're really banking on a lot of touchdown equity when it comes to Adrian Peterson. Not a bad play, not for me though. Who is going to be the chalk? Tune in Friday night or Saturday or Sunday, whenever you want, when we're doing the DraftKings ownership show, and we will tell you who is this chalk. Myself and Jeff Ulrich. You can go harass him on Twitter already at The Fantasy Grind if you'd like. Daily Fantasy. Dalton with Green and run it back with Doyle. Just try to save the chat for the questions just so I'm not sitting here being like, where's the questions at? Marvin Jones. Okay, you've already asked the same fucking question 3 times, pal. Beat it. Thoughts on Cordero Patterson in a GPP? Like, what are we doing here? Like, sure, and if he hits, you'll be the biggest genius, but you'll also be a moron who lit your money on fire because he had 0 touches. So there's a difference between contrarian and there's a difference between just playing out stupid. Not saying that, like, the guy can't return. You're going to bank on a return touchdown? Like, come on. Like, what's going on here? Maybe if you have insight that he's playing a bigger role than he's projected for, sure. Would you play Kenny Stills in a half-point PPR over Cooper Kupp and Brandon Cooks? Yeah, I think I would. Kenny Stills, fire him up. What do we think about Allen Robinson in this new Chicago offense? I'm in wait-and-see mood. I think you have to play him because you drafted him to be a wide receiver 2 for you this week, and it's a good matchup in a potentially pass-heavy situation, positive game script for him against Green Bay. But I argued about this with Celia on Monday's show. I think that there's a non-zero chance that Trey Burton leads this team in targets rather than Allen Robinson, but he should still see a 20% market share, and if that's the case for any receiver, you play him. Top 25 for sure, top 20, top 15, maybe, if he's as good as he was 2 years ago, but we're in wait-and-see mode with that. Aguilar, Carlos Hyde, PPR, I'll play Carlos Hyde there. Pat for president! I am ineligible to run for president. I am sorry. I wish I could fulfill your dreams of being president. It's just not in the cards unless you change the Constitution. I was wondering about Cordero. There's way too many people wondering about Cordero Patterson. You go talk to Andercust about Cordero Patterson. He loves Cordero Patterson. I usually roll with your golf live chat advice. What up, Tiger? Wondering your thoughts on a Newton McCaffrey Olsen stack. Don't love it. To be perfectly honest with you, if I'm going to play one of them, I'd probably play them individually, especially like naked Cam's usually a good move because he can rush in so many touchdowns. It's tough with McCaffrey and Newton because then you're relying on Newton to throw to McCaffrey for touchdowns, and Cam just rushes so many in. That's just a low probability percentage of happening that I don't love the Carolina stack regardless of matchup almost any single week. If it was Cam, Olsen, you can get away with it. I just don't think it's very likely to work out for you. Hot take, Gio is better than Mixon. I don't think that's super hot. I actually think that Gio is better than Mixon too, but when one of them is playing and one of them is not, then it really doesn't fucking matter who's better and who's not. You go with the one who's playing and not the one who's not. Thanks. The noon was sleeper. Great, thanks. Aguilar Hyde. Devontae Freeman or Royce Freeman? I prefer Devontae Freeman in this situation. I have a crazy feeling, but Jay Hill does J Hill bulldozes for 2-5. Okay, if you're going to be in the chat, at least have a coherent sentence or two. That would be nice. So keep that in mind when you're writing it out. Nah! I don't know what's going on with that. All right, now people just talking. Stills or Cobb? I would go Stills. Derrick Henry and AP. That's not even a question. That's just a statement. So great. Henry or Duke Johnson? I would go Derrick Henry. Standard or PPR. Probably a better floor with Duke Johnson, but the upside much rests in the side, and that's worth it for Derrick Henry. Would you rather play in a flex spot, Aguilar or Hyde? I would play Aguilar. You guys are asking the same questions over and over. I'll get to them, I promise. Amare or Jarvis Landry? I'll play Amari Cooper, even in the bad matchup in this spot, because I don't know what's going on with that Browns. I'm just more down on this Browns offense than I think a lot of people are. Saints defense or Jags defense to start this week? I will go with Saints defense on DraftKings in the spot. I think more potential to go sack Ryan Fitzmagic and potentially more turnovers. I think there could be a ground battle in New York. Not saying that Eli doesn't turn the ball over, but he's not throwing, though. He's only throwing the ball 25 times, whereas Fitzpatrick might throw 45 times. I'll take the opportunity of the Saints defense in that shot. Albert Wilson worth a waiver wire pickup for Edmonds. I have DJ, was using more for insurance. I just keep Edmonds in that spot. If it's Wilson and you need to play a receiver, then obviously you go pick him up and make the move. But it's just for your bench, keep Edmonds. Jamal Williams or Rex Burkhead? I like Rex Burkhead. Eagles defense is a defense you can play. Perfect. Check the rankings if you want to see where they're ranked, I guess. That needed a bit more on that question. Royce Freeman or Diggs in flex PPR? I'll take Stefan Diggs in that spot 100% of the time. Freeman's fine. Diggs is awesome. I have OBJ and Jags defense. Wouldn't that hinder my points? If you start playing those games, you just play your best players. Don't worry about that. They can both independently have really good games. Chargers defense is available on my waiver wire. Should I pick them up? I currently have Panthers defense. I don't hate the Chargers defense this week. They could be in a blow-up spot because that KC offense is really good, but you're going to want to have the Chargers defense for next week when they go to Buffalo and go kill poor either Josh Allen or Nate Peterman. Although it would be a Nate Peterman revenge spot, but maybe this time he could throw 9 picks instead of 5 1/2. We'll see how that works out. So the Chargers defense needs to be owned. I think they're a fringy top 10 play this week only. I prefer Carolina's defense for the week, but it's close. If you have some scrub on the back end, just pick them both up, play Carolina's D, then drop Carolina's D next week and just roll with the Chargers from here on out. But if you just want to make that move looking forward for the season, I prefer the Chargers, so I'd make it. Pivot off Austin Seferian-Jenkins? I mean, yeah, he's probably not playing with an abdominal injury, so that's one reason not to use him. Also, he's Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Another reason not to use Austin Seferian-Jenkins. So great. Would you start Andacust or Mark Ingram? Whoa. I mean, if I was playing low ball, they're both must-starts. I guess I'd go with Andacust in that situation. Gordon or Chris Carson in the flex? I'll bite the bullet in the bad matchup and go with Chris Carson because I'm unsure of the snaps that Josh Gordon's going to run. Henry over Duke Johnson? Yes. Newton or Ryan? I'll take Cam Newton. Besides Peyton Barber, I think Tampa Bay is abysmal for fantasy football and real life. Evans will be fine. It's a bad matchup with him and Lattimore this week, despite the opportunity that comes along, just because they can distribute it around a little bit more to Godwin, to the tight ends, to Deshaun Jackson. I think for this week only, I think that Barber is probably the only Tampa Bay buck you're looking at, unless you want to play the Fitzmagic and pray for garbage time. Lamar Miller or Doug Baldwin? Oh, that's a spicy one. You know I'm a Doug Baldwin truther, but Lamar Miller is probably objectively the safer play. I'll play Baldwin if it was me, but Lamar Miller might be your safety points there. How long do you think Bell will hold out for it? Listen, man, if I had the answer to that, I'd be in Vegas right now betting on it and being a millionaire. I have no idea. Probably 10 weeks, unless he gets traded, I suppose. Start Emmanuel Sanders or Doug Baldwin? Doug Baldwin. Pat, should I start James Conner or Marshawn Lynch in a half-point PPR? Let's go with James Conner in half-point. Drop one for a kicker. John Brown, John Ross, or Galladay. Ugh. That is... I mean, if they're all bench players to begin with, I'll say drop John Ross. I don't feel good about that, but I like how John Brown could be the number 1 in Baltimore over Crabtree. We don't know that. We know A.J. Green is solidified as the number 1, and you're never going to feel – John Ross just feels like such a boomer bust type guy that you're never going to know the week to play him. So John Ross. Drop John Ross in that situation. Do I drop Ronald Jones for Jordan Wilkins? Yeah, go do that, Mayo, right now. In case Marlon Mack doesn't play, you should definitely, yes, of course. Thoughts on Marlon Mack this season? I think this hamstring injury, whether he plays week 1 or not, has severely put him behind the 8 ball. That, at best, I think he's coming into a committee. I don't know if he's worth owning. I think that Jordan Wilkins is really the only one you want to own right now, because if he starts week 1 and he plays well, he could keep this job. I don't think that anyone's just going to come out of nowhere and win it, especially not Marlon Mack. Thoughts on Shady, even if the Bills are down? I like Shady this week. He's going to be on the field. As long as Shady is healthy, he could be in like the 30-touch range. We talk about a lot of the time, just look at the targets. Almost 60 catches last year, almost 80 targets. They have no receiving weapons, and if Nate Peterman's going to complete passes, throwing the ball 3 yards to Shady is a potential situation where he could see a lot of volume in the receiving game, especially PPR-wise. I like LaShawn McCoy. I think he's a fringy top 10 play, even in a bad matchup, because of the volume that he's going to see. I got offered Juju, Robert Woods, Alfred Morris, AP for Jordan Howard. Do I pull the trigger? If they're willing to give you all that, I suppose it depends on your team. If your team sucks, you take it and get the depth. If not, yeah, I'd probably still take it anyway. Those are good enough players. It depends on how many you would actually play week to week. Like if Juju's the only starter you have, then you have to think about it in that context too. Yeah, you build your depth, but realistically, as it pertains to your lineup, it's a straight up trade. Juju for Jordan Howard is a trade I would want Jordan Howard in. So if you're not playing the other guys and these guys aren't improving your team, then don't do it. If they are, if 3 of these 4 become your starters, then yeah, you probably do have to pull the trigger. Tevin Coleman or Chris Carson in the flex? I would flex Chris Carson. Pick 2 running backs, McCoy, Burkhead, and Dion Lewis. McCoy and Rex Burkhead. Keelan Cole or Tyler Lockett? I play Keelan Cole. Malcolm Butler on Stills Cup versus Raiders. My pick. Man, that's not even a question. No one cares, pal. Let's see. Hi, Pat! Hi, Armando. Crowell, Alfred Morris, or Tevin Coleman as a flex? I'll flex Tevin Coleman in that spot. If Alfmo wasn't in such a bad matchup and actually did stuff in the receiving game, it would be him, but I'll take the upside and potential usage and receiving game prowess of Tevin Coleman. Burkhead versus Barber, full PPR, I'll take Burkhead. Carry-on or Blunt, I would play Blunt in that situation. I don't like either one of them, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't like anyone in that Detroit backfield. Zeke, McCoy, Hyde. My receivers are, that's also not a question. Thanks for nothing. Thanks for wasting everyone's time. Might have to give you a ban. If you start leaving questions that are answers, they're like just random stuff that aren't questions, you're getting banned from the chat. PPR League, would you start Carlos Hyde or Marshawn Lynch? I'd start Lynch. People are absurdly sleeping on how good Connors is. Okay. You might be right on that one. I think he's a great play this week. Drafted McCoy in the 3rd, not really crazy about it. I know he projects for a ton of volume. Would you try to get a different running back too? If you can get someone better than McCoy, sure. I think McCoy is fine. Demaryius Thomas or Robert Woods? Demaryius Thomas. Baldwin or Sanders? PPR flex. I would play Doug Baldwin. Burkhead versus Barber in cash on DK. I would play Burkhead. Chris Thompson, Devin Funchess, or Peyton Barber? I would play Peyton Barber in that spot as a flex. Amendola or Cole in cash, so I can stack David Johnson and Kamara. I actually prefer Danny Amendola for cash games because I think his floor is a whole lot higher with Keelan Cole. Cole probably the better GPP play. Would you prefer Burkhead or Barber in cash? Probably roll the dice on Burkhead still there, just because we don't know what the full extent of the role Burkhead is going to play, but especially if Sony Michel doesn't play, he's probably their goal line back, plus he's going to be on the field a lot, even split out wide in some situations. With Barber, he's the goal line back, he's the starter, but we do not know whether or not he'll be involved in this receiving game if Tampa is behind and they're constantly throwing. That could be Jaquiz Rodgers. It could be Ronald Jones, for all we know. Or someone we haven't even heard of, Sean Wilson. Promote him, get him in the game. We don't know. So I think for safety cash game purposes, Rex Burkhead is the play. Ajayi tonight or Hyde, I would play Carlos Hyde. Chris Thompson or McCoy, I would play LaShawn McCoy in that spot. People are sleeping on Jeremy Hill. That's great, man. Great. Sleep on him. Yeah, everyone's just Taking a snooze on Jeremy Hill. Breda versus the Vikes or Lynch versus the Rams. I'll take Lynch in that spot. I don't think he's in a timeshare with Doug Martin, whereas Breda is in a timeshare with both Alfred Morris. And don't sleep on Kyle Juszczyk catching passes out of that backfield if they're down in this game. Burkhead versus Peyton Barber in cash. You just asked that. Same guy. It's still Burkhead. Thanks for nothing. I drafted McCoy in the third. Oh my God. Just going to scroll down. Just going to skip all your nonsense here. Should I be worried about Delvin Cook? Worried about him in the sense that he might not be a top 5 guy this week. They might scale back his workload, especially if they get up in this game against the Niners. But I think that he'll be on the field for at least 60% of the snaps, probably garner all the goal line work. I think there is some worry to it. You can be a little bit pensive, but it's hard to say that if you drafted Delvin Cook that you have anyone better to play it, at least 2 people better to play than him at running back. So you're playing him. Can I count on Ajayi tonight? Well, if you've been watching this show, no, can't count on him. I don't think at least. So everything just skipped on me. Baldwin, Golden Tate, Crabtree, Fitz. Pick 3. In that spot, I would say Golden Tate in half-point PPR. Was offered Cousins for Garoppolo in a 2 QB league 10-team standard. I would take Cousins over Garoppolo, actually, in that area. Burton or Crowder in the flex. Whew, that is spicy. Because we don't know about... I'll take Burton. Let's go with Burton over Crowder. That's so close, though. I actually like them both this week. James Conner, Marvin Jones in PPR. I'd still play Marvin Jones in PPR. Let's see. Anthony Miller. No question. No comparison. Get out of my chat. Banned! First ban. This is starting to piss me off. Remove. Wilkins or Duke Johnson in full point PPR. That hinges on whether Marlon Mack plays or not. It's probably still Wilkins, but Wilkins has a chance to be the goal line back and get a full workload where Duke Johnson's going to be in the passing line. He's definitely going to play, but he's behind Hyde for sure, and we don't know how Chubb factors into this. Now, you could say the same thing about Wilkins as it pertains to Christine Michael or Nyheim Hines, or if Mack plays and gets back into it, I would have more confidence in Jordan Wilkins, though. Corey Davis, oh no, it skipped on me again. There's too many questions. Jordan Howard or Fuller in the flex, I would go with Jordan Howard. Hyde, Barber, or Aguilar, I would go Peyton Barber. Corey Davis or Alfred Morris, I would go with Corey Davis. Robbie Anderson or Duke Johnson, I would still go with Duke Johnson in that sense. Jordan Howard or Will Fuller, I believe I just answered that, but it's Jordan Howard. Start Russell Wilson or Matt Stafford. Answered that one a bit earlier in more detail. I like Russell Wilson, though. Thielen or Baldwin in standard. I'll go Thielen in that spot. Full point PPR, Kittle or Vance McDonald. We don't even know if Vance McDonald's playing yet, so go with Kittle me Timbers right there. How gross of a start is Jordan Wilkins this weekend? Not that bad of a start. Not a good start by any means. Better DraftKings play than starting your season-long league, but not terrible at the same time. Could have a lot of upside. Hyde, Powell, or Kerryon Johnson. Pick 2. Sit Kerryon Johnson in that sense. AP, Powell, or Crabtree in the flex. It's AP or Crabtree. Crabtree for me. I'm still not sold on AP's full role in this Washington offense. Starter doesn't mean you get 80% of the touches. Chris Thompson was never going to be the starter to begin with. And if they get down, AP ain't going to be on the field. If you project Washington to blow out Arizona, then AP is the play. I don't have it going that way, so I'll go with Michael Crabtree. Anthony Miller, should he be picked up off waivers before the end of week 1? Yeah, I think so. I mean, the problem is if you don't pick him up now and Anthony Miller goes off, he was a hype sleeper coming into the year anyway, that it's going to cost you a whole lot of fab bucks to go get Anthony Miller in that spot. I'm sure you have someone crappy at the back end of your roster to at least take a flyer on Anthony Miller, and if he sucks, then he sucks, then you got him. Barber, Hyde, or Aguilar? Barber. Oh, it skipped on me again. There's a lot of questions in here, people. I'm sorry, and the chat just keeps randomly jumping from spot to spot on me. There's nothing I can really do about it. Stash James Conner early if he's a good week 1 start. What wide receiver value do you think he could be worth? That is almost unknowable. It depends on who you're trading with, the depth of your league, and how people value him, because everyone's going to value James Conner differently because no one knows what's going on with Le'Veon Bell. I do think that if you're going to get max value for him, if he goes out and has an astonishing week 1, his value will be even higher. I would aim high, though. I wouldn't just give James Conner away just because you want to make a move and try to sell high. I would aim as high as possible. Go for wide receiver 1. See if someone will give you Doug Baldwin for him, then that's a trade I would make. If he has a really good week 1, you might be able to get even more for that for him. But if he has a bad week 1, you're not getting anything for him. So temper your expectations, but aim high and just throw out feelers to the league. Let people counter with you. There's no one set rule when it comes to trading. If I say, hey, I would definitely give you Doug Baldwin for James Conner, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but someone might definitely do that in your league. Someone might give you Corey Davis. Someone might give you Devontae Adams. Who knows? You just go to the stupidest guy in your league and offer him up and just go hype up James Conner, and he'll give you, like, I don't know, let's see, Baldwin, Devontae Adams, maybe he'll give you Mike Evans for him. Then I think that's worth it. Just aim high. Get an asset for an asset and someone with an awful lot of upside. Pro Collins or Cobb in the flex, I like Collins. Fuller or Marvin Jones? Marvin Jones for me. David Johnson or Saquon? That one, friend, is David Johnson. Breda or Lynch? I would go with Lynch. Cousins or Watson? I would definitely go Watson. Gordon or Goodwin? I would play Marquise Goodwin. Goodwin, Fuller, Amendola, John Brown, Robbie Anderson. I wish I knew if it was if it's standard, I would play Fuller and Goodwin. If it's PPR, I would play Amendola and Goodwin in this spot. Half-point PPR, pick 3. Funchess, Terrence Williams, Sammy Watkins, John Ross, or the Duke Johnson. Let's go Funchess, Watkins, and John Ross in a half-point. If it was full point, I'd play Duke Johnson over John Ross. Best QB wide receiver correlation, it's probably Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins this week. Half point, oh, it just skipped on me again. Fuller or Marvin Jones, I think we're going back to the same spot. Oh, Crowell or Chris Thompson, I like Chris Thompson there, whether it's standard, whether it's PPR. Okay, we're back to the same spot here. Stills, Barber, or Crabtree in the flex, I will take Peyton Barber. Cooks or Corey Davis, I like Corey Davis in that spot. Start a wide receiver 3 and half point. Aguilar, Cole, or Stills, it's Stills for me. Half-point PPR flex spot, Fuller, Godwin, Wilkins, Peyton Barber. I like Peyton Barber. Sorry, not Goodwin, Godwin. I like Peyton Barber for that spot. Crowell or Chris Thompson, like I mentioned, Chris Thompson. Fuller or Marv, I like Marv. Drafted Le'Veon Bell in 2 leagues. Should I drink bleach? I don't think you should drink bleach. Don't do that. Just wait it out on this one. Carlos Hyde, Corey Davis, or Wilkins in a standard flex. I'll lean towards Corey Davis there. Evan Ingram or Trey Burton. I will take Trey Burton for sure. Henry or Hogan? Hogan. Don't play Hopkins this week, you dummy. Okay, that seems strange. What do you think of Bortles this week on DraftKings? Not for me, sorry. I think there are other ones. If you own Le'Veon Bell and he doesn't play week 1, what trade value would you put on him? Again, that's unknowable. We need to know more about the situation. That will differ literally from person to person as you ask them. Again, just try to find the guy who has the most faith in him or the guy that you know is the potential biggest risk taker in your league. Then boom, that's the way to go with one of these things. As we continue to go, remember, we're still going strong here, an hour in. We still got time for questions. I'm just going to retweet this back out again. Please give the episode a like. I'm going to try to scroll back up and get to the questions that got skipped over. Or if you just want to listen to the chat on demand and hit a lot of the stuff earlier on demand after the fact, you can go do that and go listen to the iTunes version, the Stitcher version on the Pat Mayo Experience feed. Check out all the shows that have been up there all week, uncensored, on demand, free whenever you want them. That's why I always say give it a like, because it does keep the show free, and therefore, if the show is free, you can't get mad at me if the picks are really bad, because you just trusted some guy for free on the internet. So remember that when it comes down to it. Let's see here. I have to tweet this out again, but now I can't even find it. I'll go back up. Josh Gordon or Marquise Goodwin? Marquise Goodwin. I'm starting Zeke, Alex Collins for running back, Trey Burton for tight end. Do I flex Jordan Reed or Royce Freeman? I'd flex Royce Freeman in that situation. Man, a lot of Will Fuller, Marvin Jones question. I don't know if it's all the same guy or not, but it just seems really strange. Pick 2, Alex Collins, Chris Carson, Pierre Garçon, Keelan Cole, Anthony Miller, or Jordan Wilkins. I'd go with the first 2, Chris Carson and Alex Collins. No, answered that one already. David Johnson or Barkley? David Johnson, I believe I answered that one already too. So I'll scroll back up a little bit more. Kirk or Mahomes? I'll go with Captain Kirk by a hair in that one. I'm still a bit terrified of the Chargers defense. Any idea on how C.J. Anderson might do? I actually have no idea. I would lean towards more poorly than really good as it pertains to C.J. Anderson week 1. Start 2, Ajayi, Hyde, Peterson, Henry. Henry and Not Ajayi, not Peterson. Hyde and Henry for me. That's really, really close, though, as we go into it. When do you think Lev comes back? Like I said, I don't know. Who's the Luke List and Siwoo Kim of fantasy football? It's probably John Ross this year. Tyreek Hill is sort of like the high-end version of that type of guy, just the absolute boom or the absolute bust type of player. Old school Deshaun Jackson would have been the perfect guy, or potentially even Santana Moss would be that type of player where one week it's 0, the next week it's 30 points, and it's like, God. And then you never figure out which guy to play on the right week. Full point PPR, oh no, I answered that one already. I would go Kittle over Vance McDonald. Landry, Marvin Jones, or James Conner? James Conner. What about using Big Ben and Brown? I always just as a rule, I try to avoid Big Ben on the road. Not necessarily Brown because the volume is always there, but Ben even when Brown goes off, Ben doesn't have the greatest days. It's really bizarre. It's been that way the past 4 years. So just as a rule, Ben on the road. Not to say that he can't perform well on the road. That's always a fade for me. Let's go down even more here. Ricky Seals-Jones or OJ Howard. Now we're getting to the nitty-gritty here. I like Ricky Seals-Jones more than I like OJ Howard because it's still a split with Brait in that sense. I'll go with the guy that has more concentrated target share, or at least one that's more predictable week to week to week. Standard league pick 3. Zeke, Howard, McCoy, and Hyde. Bench Hyde in that spot. That's a no-brainer. I traded Bell for Diggs. I mean, that's fair value coming back. You rid yourself of the headache. If Lev comes back in week 2, you're going to feel like a bit of an idiot, but at least you got good value back in return because I think Stefon Diggs is going to be really good. I think he's going to be better than Adam Thielen. I think if there's one of these guys that was drafted in like the mid-teens that breaks into the upper tier, that guy is going to be Stefon Diggs. So I do not hate that whatsoever. Powell or Breda in the flex? Powell has more upside, but I'll go Breda in that spot. Flex spot, Lamar Miller, Barber, Carson Cole, or Mike Williams. Lamar Miller for me in that spot. Should I hold on to Aaron Jones? If you don't need it, if you can hold on to him, I would hold on to him. Jimmy Graham or Sterling Shepard at flex. I hate Jimmy Graham, but play Jimmy Graham in that spot. Marvin Jones, Barber, or Connor in standard flex. Connor. It's very close between all three of them, but I'll go with Connor, safety and touches. Rudolph or Burton? I would play Trey Burton. Lockett or Chris Godwin? Let's go Chris Godwin in that opportunity. Would you trade Lev for Devonta Freeman? That's like, sort of like the Diggs thing. I don't like trading into a split situation, but if you want to be rid of Lev, I think that's fair compensation for someone who might sit. If you can afford to hold on to Bell and wait out for something higher, maybe if you can get another useful piece, Freeman and a wide receiver too, or if your tight end sucks, a starting tight end like a Trey Burton, someone like that, to go along with it, then I don't hate it as much. Who's your favorite QB to play this week? If I was just objectively playing one, it would be Deshaun Watson. But he's super expensive, so that might not be in the cards. I would prefer to pay down DraftKings-wise, but if we're throwing salary out of the question, it would be Deshaun Watson. Ajayi, Williams, Henry, or Aguilar for the flex spot. I have no idea. There's like 38 Williams, so if it's Jamal Williams, it's Jamal Williams. If not, I would play Derrick Henry. Is Tim Andercust even real? No. He is a figment of everyone's imagination. Do you think Sony Michel will be good for fantasy this season? I do not think so. Is James Conner a must for cash game? I think he's a good play. I don't think he's a must, however. Would you start? Oh, no. There we go. He jumped on me again. Sorry about this, guys. Gio, Penny, or Gillisley? Oh, that's rough. Gillisley. OJ Howard or Dorsett? OJ Howard, I suppose. I have Trey Burton. Should I cut Jordan Reed for Michael Gallup? No, you should not. Those are two. I mean, Jordan Reed just has an asset, even if you don't play him. Someone's going to need a tight end. He has a huge week 1. You can get way more than Michael Gallup at receiver for Jordan Reed in that situation, so I would just hold on. Marshawn Lynch or James Conner? Where do I have them? I feel like it's funny when you think about like rankings in the context, and then you actually see the head-to-head next to each other. They're very close. It's just such a bad matchup for Lynch. I'll go James Conner. Yeah, James Conner. I have Lynch at number 23. I have Conner at number 19. So even in standard, I'm going James Conner. That matchup does scare me just a little bit. Jack Doyle or Crowell or Godwin? I would play Jack Doyle in PPR scoring. Who is Siwoo Kim? Oh, I wish I didn't know, pal. I really wish I didn't. Try doing Cousins, Diggs, and Keenan. Thanks. Okay. Allen Robinson or Keelan Cole? Allen Robinson. Wilkins, Barber, or Morris? Barber. Garcon or Marquise Goodwin, I would play Marquise Goodwin this week and see how it works out. Pick 2, Lockett, Carson, or Wilkins, play the 2 running backs. Would you trade Josh Gordon and Lamar Miller for CMC Music Factory? Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, I would. That's a lot to give up, but I would. I got faith. And if it's Standard League, I would not. If it was PPR, I would. How about that? Standard League, Josh Gordon, Robbie Anderson, or Jordan Reed at the flex? Let's go Jordan Reed in that spot. Robert Woods or Funchess? I would play Robert Woods. Marvin Jones, Lamar Miller, or Jamal Williams? I would play Lamar Miller. Wilkins, Barber, or Morris? I would play Peyton Barber. Carson, Funchess, Corey Davis, and Allen Robinson. Pick 2. Davis and Carson in that spot. Who do you think wins this deal despite the uncertainty? Zeke and Larry Fitz for Michael Thomas and Bell. Probably Zeke and Larry Fitz, but if Bell comes back week 2, that's a smash win for the guy that got Bell and Michael Thomas. Because I have Michael Thomas and Bell Michael Thomas and Zeke rated equally as it pertains to season long and total points. So Bell versus Fitz coming back would be a massive swing. But if you're missing even 5 weeks of Bell, what you would have to do to compensate, Zeke's still quite good. You're getting a good package back, and you're getting an elite running back to take that spot. It's dicey. Some people would say no, and I would understand that side of the argument as well. That's not so bad, though. Burkhead, Drake, or Connor? Burkhead in the PPR. Lamar Miller or Carlos Hyde? Lamar Miller. Okay, let's try to wrap this up here. We're going to go for another 10 minutes, so get your questions in. And if I see you repeating your questions that I'm already going to get to or have already said, banned is what you're getting. Tim Andercuss is my favorite millennial. Is the Pick'em show with Feinberg and Andercuss coming out soon? We've had a problem with the video for that, actually. We put it up, but YouTube keeps eating it up every time we put it up. So just go to the podcast feed and listen to it. It's up there. It's been up there for like 3 days. iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic, all that stuff. That's where you want to go. Plus, all the cheat sheet is up on my Facebook page. So if you want to listen to that show, it's awesome. It's like 2 hours long. It's pretty funny. Go listen to that right now before the Thursday night game, because we touch on that briefly as well. So go check it out. That's why you always subscribe to the audio podcast. Trade away Diggs and Connor for Adams? No, I would not. Keelan Cole or D.D. Westbrook? I like Westbrook more. Almost 95% of people will say Cole. I just think that Westbrook's going to be involved in this, especially if Safarian Jenkins sits. He's going to be on the field just as much. And I think that he runs an easier route tree for Blake Bortles here. So I think the more targets, he might not end up with the potential for the upside in as many yards as Keelan Cole, but I just like D.D. Westbrook. Lamar Miller or James Conner? I would play Lamar Miller. Mixon versus Kenny Stills? I would play Mixon. Wilkins or Aguilar? Let's go Aguilar in that sense. Who is this year's Alvin Kamara? It might be Alvin Kamara. Who knows? He has the nameplate on the back that says Kamara, so it's most definitely leaning to be him. James White or Wilkins in a half-point PPR? James White for me. Pick 3, Mixon, Burkhead, Lynch, Jamal Williams, Connor. Let's go Mixon, Burkhead, and Connor in that circumstance. Drake or Woods? I would play Drake. I don't hate the Drake, and I would play Drake, and I would definitely play him over Robert Woods here. Kupp or Ajayi? I would play Cooper Kupp. Mixon versus Stills, just answered that one, and that would be Mixon. Where will Dez land? I don't care. This is a week 1 chat, pal. Great, people are answering other people's questions. I don't think people are here to hear what the other people in this random chat have to say. They're here to ask me. I'm trying to put it out there. And you're clogging up the chat and making it skip. Thoughts on Tevin Coleman tonight? A high upside play with a very low floor. If you want to play him in the showdown contest, don't hate it. I think he's a fringy flex play. I think he's a running back 3, fringy flex play. That type of area. It's always where Tevin Coleman is going to fall because you're never going to know what his workload is. Ajayi, Burkhead, Barber, or Baldwin? I would play Baldwin. What are you doing with Josh Gordon pitch count thing? Would you still roll him out or gamble on John Brown? I think I would take the upside on Josh Gordon in that situation. Derek Carr, Andy Dalton. I would play Andy Dalton. Kerryon Johnson could be this year's Alvin Kamara. Yeah, if he sees the field, maybe. Carson or Powell in the flex? Carson in the flex over Powell. And it looks like that's it. If you got a question, I'm giving you 1 minute to pile it in here. We'll go rapid fire style through it. If not, thank you all for tuning in. Monday show with Sealy, still very relevant. I did a Le'Veon Bell update and a quick injury report. That's up on the feed right now. The DraftKings show, still good for that Sunday slate with Dinkmeyer and Mike Leone from dailyroto.com. And there's a whole strategy show for the Millionaire Maker and Giant slates about playing multiple lineups, multiple players, the strategy of research. That's up on the YouTube feed as well. Plus that pick show, check it out podcast version wise. That's up as well. And I'll have a Friday update, and then live 10 a.m., we're going to do a show and then take your questions towards the end of it. 10 a.m. Eastern Time. DraftKings YouTube page will be available on demand to download on the iTunes feed after the fact, so you can catch it on demand. But it's myself, Gary and Tim Andercust to break it all down for you. Then I'll be back with Jake Seeley live on Monday morning, waiver wire, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Same sort of thing. We're going to do the whole show. At the end, we'll get to all your questions. So clogging up the chat is not helping anyone's opportunity to get their questions answered. We got some more piling in here, so I will try to rapid fire those before we get out of here. Let's go. Oh, there was a lot just piled in here at the last second. I love it. Love it. Give the episode a like. I love you guys. Show some love back and give the episode a like. And go back and watch those other shows too. Carson, no, I already answered that one. Pat, Tevin Coleman, Alfred Morris, or Isaiah Crowell in a standard league? Tevin Coleman. Lamar Miller, highest rushing yards last year. I would avoid him this year. Well, I mean, if you're playing last year, then boom. Then don't play Lamar Miller. If you're playing in week 1 with no Donta Foreman in the highest projected point total game of the week, probably play Lamar Miller there, pal. Burkhead or Hyde? Rex Burkhead. I drafted Bell. Who do you think's a better spot to fill this week? Coleman or Cohen? I have Mixon and Kupp as my flex. I'd go Tevin Coleman to fill that spot this week. Better GPP play, Melvin Gordon or LaShawn McCoy? Dicey, I would still play Melvin Gordon in that spot. If you want to get the contrarian play, that would actually be LaShawn McCoy. I just objectively think Melvin Gordon's a better play. Crabtree, last spot. Balalo, Crabtree or Robbie Anderson? I don't know who that first guy. If it's Doug Baldwin, then I would play Doug Baldwin. If that's someone I've never heard of, then I would play Michael Crabtree there. Trading James Conner for Kelsey. I have Burton at tight end. Thoughts on trading James Conner for Kelsey? I mean, you could play both of them if you wanted to, or I put it this way, if James Conner is really good, you probably would be able to get more than Kelsey, although I think Kelsey's a top 30 player. That's perfectly fine. I would instantly make that deal, for sure, even if I had Burton. But if James Conner sucks this week, or Kelsey goes off, or Burton goes off, you might have a more valuable trade piece on your hands. So yeah, I'd do that deal. Better upside rest of season, John Broke or Godwin? John Brown, probably, I think has the better upside because of the role that he could play in that offense. It's pretty close, though, on a week-to-week basis, unless something changes from what we see right now. If you could only play one, would it be Super Nintendo or N64? It would actually be N64. That is my wheelhouse system growing up. Played a ton of Super Nintendo, as you can see, but with the more N64 games behind me, it would be N64. I still play the N64, and very rarely do I crack out the NES for that situation. Hyde or Lynch? I would play Lynch. Woods or DJ Moore? Robert Woods. Defense to play, Eagles, Saints, or Lions? Let's play the Saints in that situation. Royce Freeman or Marshawn Lynch? Royce Freeman. Best D to play week 1, Baltimore's defense. Oh no, it skipped on me. I had a John Ross question. I'll try to scroll back up. Man, there's a lot of questions here at the last second. Ross or DJ Moore? John Ross in that spot. Breda or Ty Montgomery? Breda. Collins, Amari Cooper, or Joe Nixon? I don't know if he's related to this Homer Nixon that we're talking about. In that spot, I would play so dicey. In non-PPR, let's go Alex Collins and Joe Mixon. Trade Melvin Gordon and Diggs for McCaffrey and Antonio Brown? Yeah, do that deal. Pick 2, Trubisky, Garoppolo, or Flacco. Let's go Trubisky and Garoppolo. Lockett or Aguilar, which one to keep? I would keep Aguilar. Drake or Royce Freeman? I have them back-to-back in the rankings with Royce Freeman. One spot ahead, so let's go with Royce Freeman. PPR, Connor or Howard? Let's go with Howard still in that situation. Evans or Ajayi? Evans. Connor or Shady McCoy? Shady McCoy. Who is this year's Mark Ingram? Doug Martin is this year's Mark Ingram as worst place, because that's the only thing we're talking about if we're talking about Mark Ingram. Lynch or Burkhead PPR? Burkhead. Kenny Galladay a good hold? I think so. Lamar Miller, I'll come back next week, pal. You know what? If you're clogging up the chat, you're not coming back because you, sir, are banned. Where can I go? Banned. Boom. Banned. I have James Conner on my bench. Do I move him into the Chris Hogan spot at flex? I'd play him over Royce Freeman. I would not play him over. Who was the other one? Roy. I play Connor over Freeman, not Hogan. I would play Hogan and Connor in that spot. How about that? It's an easier way to say it. Fuller or Gordon? Let's go Gordon. Let's go Fuller. Sorry. Kamara or DJ? Kamara for me this week. Luck versus the Bungles or Ben on the road against the Browns? You're taking the chance with Luck, but I also like the matchup more. Let's go with Andrew Luck. Thielen or Hogan? I like Chris Hogan this week in that spot. Cam Meredith or Gallup? Let's go with Gallup. Luck or Dalton? Let's go with Luck there. Very close. Dalton probably safer. Hogan or Thielen? Chris Hogan. Crabtree or Jordan Howard? Let's go with Jordan Howard over Michael Crabtree. Whew. I'm sweating. I've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. Thank you all. We got one more coming in. Marquise Goodwin versus the Vikings or Tyler Lockett's Marquise Goodwin. Pat, it's nice to have you to actually get questions answered. Great show. Thank you. And this last one, Marv versus Baldwin. You know I'm rolling out Baldwin. Like them both. That's actually my starting wide receiver core in my home keeper league. Also, I don't have a good team in that league. Sold the farm to win a championship, and I still haven't recovered. Oh, pick two. Goodwin, Fuller, Aguilar, Amendola. Amendola. Oh, I guess this is standard. Goodwin for sure, and Fuller in that spot for standard. All right. That'll do it. Question period time is over. Thank you for coming in for the chat. You can check out the rankings if you got start sits. Check out all the shows. Give the episode a like. Trying to pump out as much content as possible. You can always hit me up on Twitter. I try to get to as many of those as possible. But remember, live 10 a.m. That show is going to be a ton of fun. Check out the iTunes feeds for all the show on demand. Bring it with you. Thank you all for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. I might try to have some fun with people. But hey, it's part of the show, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. Good luck in week 1. I'll see you next time.